When you hear the name Sublime, you probably think of that laid-back, sun-soaked Southern California vibe, right? But the real story of this band, well, it's a whole lot more complicated. It's this wild mix of genre-bending music, a serious DIY hustle, unbelievable tragedy, and now, somehow, an unexpected rebirth. It's a legacy that goes way deeper than just a few hits on the radio.
And you really can't tell this story without starting right here, with this one line. It's from their frontman Bradley Nowell, and it's just chillingly prophetic. This line kind of sets the stage for everything that follows, a story where the art and the artist's life were just tragically tangled up and where the band's darkest songs were coming from a place of devastating reality.
And here's the craziest part of the whole thing. Sublime didn't become a global phenomenon until after the band was technically over. Their final album ended up being both their masterpiece and their eulogy, cementing their place as legends in the most heartbreaking way imaginable.
So to really get this, we've got to go back to the beginning. We're in Long Beach, California, 1988. In this place, it was like a cultural pressure cooker. You had the surf and skate scene crashing right into raw punk rock, all while the sounds of Jamaican reggae and East Coast hip-hop were taking over. Sublime wasn't just from this scene, they pretty much were this scene. I mean, get this, their very first official show turned into a full-blown riot. A riot! This wasn't just some concert. It was an event that immediately locked in their reputation for having this raw, unpredictable energy that would define them from the get-go.
So, you can probably guess, with a reputation for starting riots, the established music industry wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. Mainstream venues, record labels, they were all like, no thanks. But the band's response? Pure, genius, do-it-yourself hustle.
Okay, so what did they do? First, they just invented their own record label, Skunk Records, literally just to look legit enough to book some gigs. Then they'd sneak into a local university's recording studio late at night to cut their tracks. And they'd built their entire early fan base by hand, selling cassette tapes directly to people from the trunk of their car. This was hustle on a whole other level.
And you know what? It actually worked. Before any major label even gave them the time of day, they sold over 60,000 copies of their first album, 40 Ounces to Freedom, all by themselves. A number that big, completely independent, well, that's what finally made the industry have to sit up and pay attention.
So what was this sound? What was this music that the industry couldn't figure out, but that kids were literally buying out of the back of a car? Well, it wasn't just a mix of genres. It was more like they were taking modern music apart and putting it back together in a whole new way. You could call it an act of musical archaeology.
See, Bradley Nowell wasn't just a songwriter. He was more like a musical archaeologist. He would dig up these amazing melodies, bass lines, and lyrics from the deepest corners of reggae, punk, hip-hop, even old jazz standards, and then he'd rebuild them into something that felt totally new, but also weirdly familiar. The best example of this is their huge hit, Doin' Time. It's built around a sample from George Gershwin's classic, Summertime. But, and this is a crazy story, the Gershwin estate wouldn't clear the sample unless they used the original lyric, Summertime. Bradley had already passed away, so the producer, Miguel Happold, had to go into the studio and sing that one word himself, trying his best to sound like Bradley, just to get the album released. The version you know with Doing Time was only put back on the album years later.
And this wasn't just a one-off thing. This was their whole MO. Take what they did with the Grateful Dead's Scarlet Begonias. It's not really a cover, it's a complete teardown and rebuild. They take the original song, inject it with this deep, dubby bass line, and then graft on a classic hip-hop drum break. It's a totally different creation.
And the list just goes on and on. The main melody in What I Got is a nod to the Beatles. April 29th, 1992 is built on one of the most legendary beats in hip-hop history. They're pulling from Jamaican dancehall for Caress Me Down, and they're borrowing from the British ska icons, The Specials, for Wrong Way. It was just this incredible sonic collage.
All right, so now we get to the part of the story where everything changes. Just when the band was right on the edge of becoming massive, of getting everything they worked for, their biggest success collided head-on with an unthinkable tragedy. Just look at this timeline. It's absolutely staggering. In May of 1996, Bradley Nowell gets married to the mother of his son. 1 week later, just 1 week, he dies of a heroin overdose. 2 months after he's gone, the album they just finished is released. And within a year, that album has 3 number-1 hits. The band was suddenly huge, but its leader wasn't there to see it.
And the success that followed was, it was astronomical. As of 2022, Sublime has sold over 20 million albums across the globe. They became this massive institution, but it was an institution built around a voice that was already gone.
So, after Bradley's death,
The surviving members, Eric Wilson and Bud Gaw, they immediately broke up the band. They had a pact that Sublime was Bradley. But the music, the brand, that took on a life of its own.
You've got to hear the story of their logo. That sun, right? You've seen it everywhere. It was created by a local tattoo artist and friend of the band, Opie Ortiz. He airbrushed it onto a shirt that Bradley bought from him for $20. That $20 design is now a global symbol, recognized by people who sometimes don't even know the band's tragic story.
But the years that followed were, well, they were complicated. The surviving guys tried to get back together with a new singer, which actually sparked a lawsuit from Bradley's estate over who had the rights to the name. That whole mess eventually led to the creation of Sublime with Rome. But even that version didn't feel right to everyone, with the original drummer, Bud Gaw, eventually leaving because he said it just wasn't authentic.
And for decades, it really felt like that was the end of the story. A complicated, messy ending. But just recently, a brand new chapter started to unfold, centered around the one person who could truly carry the torch, Bradley's own son.
And the level of care they're taking with this new era is pretty remarkable. Bradley's son, Jakob, who's now fronting the band, he put together this thing he calls the Skin Bible. It's basically a forensic breakdown of his dad's entire musical formula. Every chord progression, every lyrical theme, every song structure, all to make sure that any new music is true to that original Sublime DNA.
And their commitment to authenticity is seriously deep. They're using Bradley's actual original guitar and amp from back in the day. They're recording with Bud's original drum kit from the 90s. Jakob even uses a Venn diagram to make sure the new lyrics hit that perfect Sublime balance between being sincere and being kind of smart-alecky.
And this is the key to the whole thing. This isn't about replacing Bradley. Jakob himself has said it's about giving an epilogue, a final chapter for a band whose story was cut short so violently. It's a chance to finally give it a proper goodbye.
Which, leaves us with this really fascinating question. As this new chapter for Sublime unfolds, it makes you wonder, can a sound, a feeling, a whole vibe ever really be reborn? Or is a legacy like this just a perfect moment in time, something you can honor and celebrate, but maybe never truly repeat?